Welcome to Future Forward, the podcast where we unpack the technology that's shaping tomorrow. I'm your host, Maria.
And I'm Gabriel. It's great to be back.
So, Gabe, today we're diving into something that, on the surface, sounds a little wild. We're talking about people making real money, sometimes a lot of money, by selling sentences.
It's the new digital gold rush, isn't it? Selling AI prompts. It's this whole new cottage industry that's sprung up almost overnight. And I think a lot of people are still trying to wrap their heads around what that even means.
Exactly. Like, why would you pay for a string of text you type into a machine? So let's start there. For anyone who's just hearing this term, prompt engineering, what are we actually talking about?
Okay, so think of a generative AI, like ChatGPT for text or Midjourney for images, as an incredibly talented but very literal-minded intern.
Okay, I like that.
You can say, write me an email, and it'll write you an email. It'll be generic, functional maybe. But if you want a great email, one that's persuasive, in a specific tone, aimed at a particular audience, with a clear call to action, you can't just say, write an email.
Right, you need to give it direction.
Precisely. You have to be the director. The prompt is your set of instructions. A good prompt engineer knows how to talk to the machine in its own language, not code, but the language of context, constraints, and desired output. They know which levers to pull.
So it's the difference between asking for a picture of a dog and asking for a photorealistic image of a golden retriever puppy sitting in a field of wildflowers at golden hour, shallow depth of field, captured with a 50mm lens, style of Annie Leibovitz.
There you go. That's a perfect example. The second one gives you art. The first gives you a picture of a dog. That specificity, that understanding of how the AI interprets words like photorealistic or shallow depth of field, that's the craft. And that's what people are paying for.
They're paying for the shortcut, to get the art without spending hours trying to figure out the magic words themselves.
Exactly. Time is money. If you're a small business owner who needs 50 blog post ideas optimized for SEO, you could spend a day trying to get ChatGPT to cooperate. Or you could pay $5 for a prompt that someone has already perfected to give you exactly that every single time.
Which brings us to the how and where. Where is this happening? I've seen articles about marketplaces popping up.
Oh yeah, the big one is probably PromptBase. It's like an app store, but for AI prompts. You can find prompts for literally everything, from generating logos and t-shirt designs to writing legal documents or workout plans.
I was scrolling through it the other day. It's fascinating. I saw prompts for creating children's coloring book pages, architectural mock-ups, even prompts to make the AI act as a specific persona, like a stoic philosopher to give you life advice.
Right. And those aren't simple. A good persona prompt is complex. It'll say something like, adopt the persona of Marcus Aurelius. Respond only with wisdom grounded in Stoic principles. Never break character. Frame your advice in the form of short, reflective questions. That takes trial and error to get right.
And it's not just these dedicated marketplaces, right? People are selling on Etsy.
Etsy, Gumroad, creator platforms. You'll see 1,000 Midjourney prompts for fantasy artists sold as a digital download. They're bundling them. It's less about selling one perfect prompt and more about selling a toolkit for a specific niche.
And I guess there's also the high-end, the consulting side of it?
Absolutely. That's where the serious money is. Companies are hiring prompt engineers, either as freelancers or full-time staff, to build and optimize workflows. They're not just buying a single prompt. They're paying someone to integrate AI into their customer service, their marketing, their data analysis. That's a six-figure job in some cases.
Wow, so it runs the gamut from a $5 digital download on Etsy to a $150,000 a year job at a tech company.
It really does. The gig economy meets the future of work.
Okay, so let's get into the nitty-gritty. What makes someone good at this? Is it a technical skill, a creative one, both?
It's a fantastic question, and I think the answer is yes, it's both. You have to have a bit of a hacker mindset. You're constantly experimenting, iterating. You write a prompt, see the output, and think, okay, that's not quite right. What if I rephrase this? What if I add a negative constraint telling it what not to do?
So like, don't use corporate jargon or don't make the image cartoonish.
Exactly. But you also need deep domain knowledge. The person writing the best prompts for legal contract analysis is probably a lawyer or paralegal. The person writing amazing prompts for fantasy art is an artist who understands concepts like composition, lighting, and different artistic styles.
That makes so much sense. You have to know what a good output looks like before you can even begin to guide the AI to create it.
You do. And you need to be a good communicator. Not to the AI, necessarily, but to the person buying your prompt. You have to be able to explain what your prompt does, why it's valuable, and how to use it. That's marketing.
It feels like finding a niche is critical then. You can't just be a general prompt seller. You need to be the person who sells the best prompts for Shopify product descriptions, or the go-to for pixel art character sprites.
100%. The market for a picture of a dog is saturated. The market for a vector logo of a Shiba Inu for a crypto startup, minimalist style, single-line art is where you find your customers.
So if someone listening is thinking, hey, I could do this, what's the first step? Just start messing around with ChatGPT?
That's the best way to start. Pick an AI you find interesting. Midjourney, Stable Diffusion, Claude, whatever. And pick a subject you know well. If you're a teacher, try to build the ultimate lesson plan generator. If you're a musician, try to create prompts that generate interesting chord progressions or lyric ideas.
So you build something that's useful for you first.
Yes, because if you can't make it useful for yourself, you'll never be able to sell it to someone else. Document your process. Keep a spreadsheet of what works and what doesn't. You'll start to see patterns in how the AI responds. That's when you're moving from just using AI to actually engineering with it.
This brings up an interesting question, though, Gabe. What are you actually selling? You're not selling a copyrighted piece of software. It's just text. Can't someone buy your prompt for $5 and then share it with all their friends?
That is the million-dollar question. And frankly, the legal and ethical frameworks are, let's say, lagging behind the technology. Right now, it's mostly operating on an honor system. But the real value isn't just the text of the prompt itself.
What do you mean?
Well, the best sellers on these platforms provide support. They include a guide on how to tweak the prompt for different results. They update the prompt when the underlying AI model gets an update, because a prompt that worked perfectly on GPT-4 might not work as well on GPT-5. You're selling expertise and maintenance, not just a static block of text.
It's a service, not just a product.
The smart ones are treating it that way, yes. They're building a community around their work. A Discord server, a newsletter with new prompt techniques. They're establishing themselves as an authority in their niche.
Okay, so let's pivot to the big looming question. Is this a bubble? Is prompt engineer a real long-term career? Or is it going to be like being a social media guru in 2010? Something that just gets absorbed into other jobs?
I lean towards the latter, but with a big asterisk. I don't think we'll have Chief Prompt Officer as a common job title in 10 years.
Yeah, probably not.
But the skill of prompt engineering, that's just going to become a core competency for almost every knowledge worker. In the same way that knowing how to use Google effectively or write a professional email is a basic expectation now, being able to effectively communicate with an AI will be too.
So the graphic designer of the future will just be an expert Midjourney prompter. The copywriter of the future will be a master at directing GPT models.
I think so. The tools will get better. The AIs will get better at interpreting vague, natural language. You won't need as many weird hacks and specific keywords, but the fundamental skill of having a clear vision and being able to articulate it with precision to a non-human collaborator, that's not going away.
But what about the marketplaces, the Etsy sellers? Does that economy dry up as the general population gets better at this?
Some of it might. The market for basic prompts will disappear, but there will always be a high end. Think about cooking. Most people know how to cook a decent meal, but we still have Michelin star chefs, right? We still buy cookbooks from experts who have spent thousands of hours perfecting a technique.
That's a great analogy. People will pay for that top 1% of quality and creativity.
Exactly. The people who are truly pushing the boundaries of what these models can do, creating entirely new art styles, developing incredibly complex workflows. There will always be a market for their expertise, whether it's sold as a prompt, a course, or consulting.
So the advice is, don't just learn to write prompts. Learn to be a creative director for an AI.
That's it. That's the whole game right there. The technology is the instrument, but you're the musician.
It's just fascinating to watch a whole new profession be born in real time. It's messy and weird and full of hype, but there's something genuinely new there.
It's the digital frontier, all over again. People are staking their claims, figuring out the rules as they go. It's chaotic, but it's also where all the opportunity is.
So, what's the most impressive or craziest prompt you've seen for sale?
I saw one recently that was pretty wild. It was a prompt for a text-based AI that turned it into a fully-fledged text adventure game engine. You could give it a theme like cyberpunk detective story, and it would generate the world, the characters, the puzzles, and act as the dungeon master, all from one enormous, incredibly complex starting prompt.
No way!
Yes, it was pages long. It had sections for rule systems, for character memory, for plot generation. It was practically a piece of software written in English. Someone spent weeks, maybe months, perfecting that. And they were selling it for like $30.
That's incredible. That right there is the perfect example of selling expertise, not just a sentence. You're selling a whole new capability that most people would never even think to ask the AI for.
And that's where the future lies. Not in gaming the system, but in genuinely creative collaboration with it.
You mentioned creative collaboration, Gabe, and that makes me think about the other side of this coin. We've talked about the opportunities, but what are the ethical considerations here? With a powerful enough prompt, could someone generate convincing misinformation or create harmful content?
This is a critical point, Maria, and it's probably the most important conversation we need to be having around this technology. The answer is unequivocally yes. The same tools that can be used to create beautiful art, write helpful code, or generate innovative business plans can absolutely be used to create sophisticated and scalable misinformation campaigns. It's the double-edged sword of any powerful technology. The barrier to creating convincing fake news articles, doctored images, or even synthetic audio and video is dropping to near zero. We're entering an era where our default assumption has to be skepticism about the digital content we consume. It's a fundamental shift in our relationship with information.
So it's like the end of trust in a way? At least trust in what we see online. That's a huge societal shift. How do we even begin to navigate that?
It's not the end of trust, but it's the end of easy trust. It's the end of taking digital information at face value. And navigating it is a two-front war, really. On one side, you have the technology front. The AI developers are in a constant arms race. They build a safeguard, someone finds a clever prompt to bypass it. They call it jailbreaking. So the platforms are working on things like digital watermarking for AI-generated content, or detection algorithms that can spot synthetic media.
But that's not foolproof, right? Someone could always find a way around it.
Exactly. It's a deterrent, not a cure. So the other front, the more important one, is the human front. It's about education and media literacy. We, as a society, have to get a lot more sophisticated in how we consume information. We need to teach critical thinking, source verification, and digital literacy from a young age. It's no longer a soft skill, it's a fundamental survival skill in the 21st century.
That's a heavy lift, changing how an entire society processes information. It also brings up another ethical minefield, doesn't it? The question of bias. These AIs are trained on the internet, and, well, the internet isn't always the most shining example of humanity.
That's a brilliant and terrifying point. The phrase garbage in, garbage out has been around in computing for decades. But now, the garbage is the collected biases of human history, and the out can be incredibly subtle and persuasive. An AI trained on historical business data might conclude that company leaders should be male, simply because the data reflects historical inequality. It's not malicious, it's just pattern recognition. But the result is that it perpetuates the very biases we're trying to move away from.
And so the prompt engineer's job in this case is almost like being a debiasing agent. You have to be smart enough to write a prompt that counteracts the AI's built-in blind spots.
Precisely. It's a huge part of the job, or at least it should be. The best prompt engineers aren't just trying to get a cool picture or a block of text. They are actively thinking about the potential for bias and building prompts that are more robust and fair. This might involve adding specific instructions like show a diverse team of professionals or providing context that steers the AI away from stereotypical outputs. It's like being a digital sociologist, constantly probing the AI for its hidden assumptions.
That's a huge responsibility, and it makes me circle back to that bubble question we touched on earlier. Is this kind of detailed, ethical prompting a temporary job? As the AIs get smarter and more refined, won't they just fix themselves? Won't they learn to be less biased on their own, making this deep-level prompt engineering obsolete?
That's the core of the bubble question, isn't it? The optimistic view is yes, that the next generation of AI models will be trained on more diverse, more carefully curated data. And the AI companies are spending enormous amounts of money on reinforcement learning with human feedback, or RLHF, which is basically having armies of people who rate the AI's responses to teach it to be less biased and more helpful. So, yes, the raw output will get better, but
There's always a but.
the complexity of human interaction and the nuances of what we consider fair or good are, well, they're a moving target. An AI can be trained to avoid yesterday's biases, but it can't predict tomorrow's ethical dilemmas. There will always be a need for a human in the loop to provide context, to understand the specific goals of a project, and to make a judgment call. The AI is a powerful engine, but it doesn't have a conscience. That's what the human provides.
So, the job isn't about being a better typist than the next person. It's about having better judgment. The prompt engineer is like the AI's conscience.
That's a great way to put it. The prompt engineer is the AI's conscience, and that vision, that judgment, is a uniquely human skill. So, to answer your question directly, no, I don't think this is a bubble in the sense that the skill will vanish. The title, prompt engineer, might fade away, but the function will just become a crucial part of other jobs. A senior graphic designer in 2030 who doesn't know how to expertly guide an image AI will be like a graphic designer today who doesn't know how to use Photoshop. It just becomes a part of the expected toolkit.
Okay, so for the person listening right now who is thinking, all right, I'm sold. I want to be the AI's conscience. I want to be that creative director. What's the actual practical path? We talked about just messing around, but how do you go from just a tinkerer to a professional that someone would actually pay?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Okay, so rule number 1 is to specialize. The world doesn't need another person who can generate a pretty picture of a dragon. It's too generic. But the world might need the go-to person for generating historically accurate Viking art, or photorealistic food photography for restaurant menus, or even complex legal clauses for tech startups.
So you're saying find your niche.
Find your niche and dominate it. Become the expert in that one specific area. This comes from what we talked about earlier, combining your existing domain knowledge with AI skills. If you're a teacher, become the expert on prompts for lesson planning. If you're a programmer, become the expert on prompts for code generation and debugging.
Okay, that makes sense. So specialize. What's next? Do you just start shouting into the void that you're an expert?
Laughs. You could, but it might not be very effective. The next step is to build a public portfolio. This is absolutely critical. You need to show your work, not just the final output, but the prompt itself. Create a blog, a website, even a dedicated Instagram or X account, and showcase your best creations. Explain your process. Why did you choose certain words? What did you try that didn't work? This builds credibility and trust. Exactly, because that does two things. First, it proves you actually know what you're doing, but second, it builds a community. People will start to follow you for your insights, not just your flashy results. They'll ask questions, offer their own tweaks, and that's how you build a reputation. The most successful people in this space aren't just selling prompts, they're teaching a methodology. Exactly. It's the difference between being a user and being a creator. A user knows how to get a result. A creator understands the system well enough to get a result that no one has ever gotten before. And that brings us to more advanced techniques. Beyond just building a great portfolio, we're starting to see people use prompts in ways that are more like programming than writing.